so get this. Are you ready to have your productivity script totally flipped? Like, what if I told you the secret to getting more done was planning to do nothing?
Okay. I'm listening. That's pretty counterintuitive.
Yeah, right. That sounds crazy, but that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Sounds interesting.
It's this blog post. It's called Paradox of Planning Nothing. And it's got this little kind of like subtitle thing, Secrets of Perfect Schedule.
Okay.
It's by Žarko Srzić.
Huh?
And he just published it a couple of days ago, actually, January 30th, 2025.
Oh, very recent.
Yeah, so it's super fresh. And the basic idea is that you can boost your flexibility and your focus and actually get more done with less stress if you embrace empty space in your schedule.
I like where this is going because so much productivity advice is about like cramming more into your day.
Right.
This is kind of a refreshing take.
Totally. And Srzić, he starts off by tackling this idea that we're always short on time.
Oh, yeah.
Which, we all say it, right? I don't have time.
All the time.
Yeah, but he thinks it might be more about how we see things than, like, actual reality.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, we've all got 24 hours, right?
Yeah, we do. It's true.
So maybe it's not about the amount of time, but how we're using it or how we think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder if this feeling of always being rushed is kind of a byproduct of, like, the always-on culture we live in.
Yeah.
And maybe we just overcommit ourselves.
Yeah, could be.
We say yes too much, and then we end up feeling stretched thin.
And the blog goes on to point out that there are some, like, typical planning pitfalls that a lot of us fall into.
Oh, like what?
Well, like, we tend to put all these scheduled events first, meetings, appointments, all that stuff.
Right, yeah.
But just showing up doesn't automatically mean we're actually being productive, does it?
No, not at all. And then on top of all that scheduled stuff, you've got this avalanche of, like, smaller tasks and digital distractions that clutter up your mental bandwidth, emails, messages, errands. It's like we're constantly juggling.
And something's going to drop.
Exactly. Something's bound to drop eventually.
And then that just reinforces the feeling that we don't have enough time, which is a vicious cycle.
Totally a vicious cycle.
The blog uses this example. If you're always saying, like, I don't have time, even for just simple things like catching up with friends.
Yeah.
It might be a sign that there's a deeper problem with how we're setting our priorities.
That's a really good point. Like, we might just think we're busy.
Yeah.
But if we can't make time for things that we enjoy or, for those important relationships, then it's worth looking at whether our actions are really matching up with our values.
Exactly. And then there's this other trap that I think a lot of us fall into, and that's the pressure to respond to emails, like, right away.
Yeah.
It's like everyone else gets to decide how we spend our time.
It's true. So how do we break free from that?
Well, the blog mentions this idea of digital minimalism.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's been championed by Cal Newport, among others. And the basic idea is that all this constant digital stimulation is actually fragmenting our attention. And it makes it harder to do that deep focused work, which is where the real value lies.
Right. It's like we're training our brains to be reactive instead of proactive.
Totally. And the blog shares this anecdote about this colleague who stays late at work just so they can work in peace.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, I bet a lot of listeners can relate to that.
Definitely. And while I get wanting to have uninterrupted time to focus, I found that if you're consistently working late, it can lead to burnout and actually make you less productive overall.
That's a really good point.
It's so important to set boundaries and, prioritize rest and recharge time.
Yeah, and I think that highlights this core idea from the blog. Every time we say yes to one thing, we're automatically saying no to something else.
That's so true.
Maybe it's sleep or time with family or exercise or even just a few moments of quiet,
It's all connected.
We often make these trade-offs without even realizing it, but if we can be more mindful of them, it can be really empowering.
Absolutely. And that leads us to this idea that the blog calls the method of pushing tasks.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's not about procrastination. It's about being strategic with your time and energy.
Okay, so let's break that down because I think this is where things start to get really interesting. Okay, so we're talking about how all these external demands, email and our tendency to overcommit can make us feel constantly busy.
Right, and like we never have enough time.
Exactly. But this method of pushing tasks, this really caught my attention.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
So what exactly does that involve?
Well, it's all about recognizing that not every task is created equal,
Right.
and making deliberate choices about what we tackle now versus later.
So instead of feeling like we have to do everything right this second, we
Exactly.
can strategically delay certain tasks without it being a total disaster.
Exactly, and that frees up mental space for the stuff that really matters.
So it's like a mental triage for our to-do list.
I like that analogy, yeah.
We figure out what's truly urgent and important, and then we push the other stuff to give ourselves some breathing room.
Exactly, and think about that story from the blog about the colleague who stays late at work to find some peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the surface, it might seem productive, but it often means sacrificing other things that are important for our well-being.
Like rest and relationships and personal time.
Exactly, all those things.
And that brings us back to that time crunch illusion.
Right.
We might feel like we're always running out of time, but maybe it's because we haven't been intentional about how we're spending it in the first place.
Exactly. We might be working late, not because we actually have to,
Mm.
but because we haven't made space in our day to focus on what really matters.
So this method of pushing tasks can help with that.
It can definitely help create that space.
Okay, so how do we decide which tasks can be pushed?
Yeah, that's important.
Because there's a fine line between strategic delay and just plain procrastination, right?
Absolutely. The blog really emphasizes being careful about what you choose to push.
Okay.
It's not about ignoring your responsibilities, but more about asking yourself, what can wait without causing harm?
I see.
Maybe it's answering that non-urgent email tomorrow morning instead of right now, or running that errand on the weekend instead of trying to squeeze it in during an already crazy day.
That makes sense.
So by pushing those less urgent things, we free up space to concentrate on the things that really need our attention right now.
It's like clearing the clutter from our mental workspace.
Exactly, so we can actually get things done.
And what I love about this method is that it seems like it could have a ripple effect.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like by freeing up mental bandwidth, we reduce stress, we increase focus, and we actually become more productive in every area of our lives.
Absolutely, it's all connected.
Then Srzić just blows our minds with this idea.
Right.
He says that to create a truly flexible schedule, we need to block time for absolutely nothing.
Sounds crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the ultimate counterintuitive productivity hack.
It is.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, those empty slots on our calendars, they act as buffers. You know?
Okay.
They absorb all those unexpected things that pop up throughout the day.
Which, let's face it, happens all the time.
So instead of our carefully planned schedule falling apart at the slightest disruption,
Right.
we have the flexibility to adapt and adjust without losing our cool.
So it's like building shock absorbers into our day.
I love that. Yes, it's like shock absorbers for our schedule so we can handle those bumps in the road without getting totally derailed.
I love that. And those nothing blocks, they're not just for dealing with unexpected stuff.
Right.
They also give us time to rest and reflect and think creatively.
Yes, exactly.
They let us step back from all the doing and just be...
Which can be so restorative.
And lead to new insights and ideas.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm starting to see the magic of this.
Right.
By planning nothing, we're not just managing our time better, but we're also creating space for spontaneity and creativity and overall well-being.
Exactly. It's like we're taking back control of our days instead of letting them control us.
And Srzić points out that this approach can actually make your schedule seem perfect to other people.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Because you're always ready to adjust and handle new requests without getting stressed out.
You're unflappable.
Exactly. So it's not just about being more productive. It's about having a sense of ease and flow in our lives.
Right. Instead of feeling like you're always behind or overwhelmed,
Yeah.
you have the space to respond to challenges and opportunities with grace and intention.
This is so inspiring. I'm already thinking about how I can rearrange my schedule to make some nothing time.
I love it.
But I have to admit, it's a little daunting.
Well, how so?
Like, what if I just end up using those empty slots to scroll through social media or watch cat videos?
I hear you. That's a common concern.
Yeah.
And that's where intentionality comes in. Those nothing blocks are an invitation to be present, to reconnect with ourselves and our priorities. Maybe it's going for a walk in nature, spending time with loved ones reading a book, or simply enjoying a few moments of quiet contemplation.
So it's not about filling those blocks with more stuff.
Exactly.
It's about using them to nourish our minds and bodies and spirits.
Yes, it's about creating space for the things that truly matter.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's important to remember that this is a process, not a destination.
Right, it's a journey.
We're not going to have perfect schedules overnight.
No, it takes time.
It's about experimenting and figuring out what works for us and gradually shifting our mindset away from that constant busyness
Right.
toward a more balanced and intentional way of living.
Exactly. And I think it's helpful to reframe those nothing blocks as opportunities instead of voids.
Yeah.
They're not empty spaces. They're pockets of possibility waiting to be filled with things that bring us joy, energy, and inspiration.
Beautifully said. And that brings us to the practical side of things. How do we actually put this paradox of planning nothing into practice in our own lives? This whole idea of planning nothing, it's really mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
But I think a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, okay, this sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make it work in our lives?
Yeah, how will we put it into practice?
Exactly. So where do we even begin?
Well, I think the first step is really changing how we think about time.
Okay.
Instead of seeing it as something we need to constantly fill up and maximize.
Yeah. Always trying to squeeze more in.
Exactly. We need to start seeing it as a valuable resource, something to be protected and used intentionally.
So being more mindful of how we spend our time.
Exactly, and making choices that align with our values and priorities.
Okay, so that might mean saying no to things more often.
It might.
To things that drain our energy or distract us from what's important.
Right, it's about taking back control of our schedules instead of letting them control us.
So instead of feeling like we have to say yes to every request or opportunity that comes our way, we can be more selective and prioritize the things that really matter to us.
Exactly. And that's where those nothing blocks come in.
Okay.
They give us the space and flexibility to handle those unexpected things that come up.
Yeah. Life always throws us curveballs.
It does. And those nothing blocks also give us time to just rest and recharge and reconnect with ourselves.
I love that analogy of the buffers that absorb the chaos of life.
Yeah. It's just like having shock absorbers for our day.
So we don't get totally derailed by every little bump in the road.
Exactly. And those buffers, they don't have to be huge chunks of time,
Okay.
Even 15 or 20 minutes here and there can make a difference.
That's good to know because sometimes it feels like there's no way to find big blocks of time.
Right. But the key is to use whatever time you do have intentionally.
So instead of automatically grabbing our phones or mindlessly scrolling during those little breaks, we can do something that actually nourishes us.
Exactly. Maybe it's taking a walk, meditating, reading a book.
Yeah.
Spending time with loved ones.
Or just sitting in silence for a few minutes.
Yeah, just being present. The possibilities are endless.
But the point is to choose things that align with our values.
Right.
And that make us feel good.
Exactly. Things that bring us a sense of peace and fulfillment.
It's like giving ourselves permission to just be.
Yes, instead of feeling like we always have to be doing something.
And I bet as we get better at planning nothing, we'll start to see positive changes in other areas of our lives too.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many benefits.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, I think we'll feel less stressed and more focused.
That makes sense.
By creating space in our schedules, we reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Right.
And we can be more present in each moment.
And I bet it would make us more productive too.
Oh, definitely. When we're not constantly feeling rushed or distracted, we can bring more clarity and intention to our work. And that usually leads to better results.
So it's not just about getting more done. It's about doing things better.
Exactly. And beyond productivity, we might find that we have more energy and enthusiasm for the things we really care about.
So it's like a positive feedback loop.
It is. When we prioritize our own well-being, it benefits every area of our lives.
This is amazing. I'm so glad we talked about this today.
Me too.
It's given me a lot to think about.
Same here.
And I'm definitely going to start experimenting with planning nothing in my own life.
I can't wait to hear how it goes.
So to wrap things up, let's give our listeners a little challenge.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
What's one small change you can make to your schedule today to create a little bit of nothing time for yourself?
Yeah. What's one thing you can do right now?
Maybe it's rescheduling a meeting.
Or saying no to something you don't really have to do.
Or even just blocking out 15 minutes to go for a walk.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big thing, just a small step towards creating more space and intention in your life.
Your mind, body, and spirit will thank you.
They will.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.